What's good, Pinsar basketball fam? This is going to be a really short one because I am due on playback at 9:35, and we only have 25 minutes to do this. So let's do this. Some channel updates first. I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of days reflecting on what more I can do for this channel, and one of the things I thought of was why not reach out to people that I know and bring on guests who really cover this draft in a deep and meaningful way and give myself the competitive advantage over other podcasters. Not only am I doing as deep a dive as I've ever done into the NBA draft this year, but I know people who are doing even deeper dives than I am. And I think that those conversations will be incredibly illuminating as it pertains to Raptors draft targets at both their lottery pick and their second round pick. So I think that that is going to be really good for this team. I'm happy to inform you that there are two awesome analysts who have confirmed they think about this draft completely differently than I do. They have very different boards than I do, and I think that it's going to be a very respectful, intelligent, and illuminating discussion. And I can't wait to share that with you guys. So that's going to come in the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited about that. Okay. Now, the subject of this video, frankly, is well, you've already answered it. Short answer to the video title: yes. Are the Raptors ready to compete? But compete for what? Compete for what? What are we competing for? Look, as I watch the play-in tournament, as I watch teams like Orlando struggle to score, as I watch teams like Atlanta struggle to score, as I watch teams like the Heat having very incomplete performances. Granted, there's a great deal of upside with Khalil Ware, etc. As I watch teams like maybe the Detroit Pistons emerge through the East, as I watch teams like the Boston Celtics get sold with their very expensive tax bill coming up, I realized that there might be a team that may be a little bit better than people are giving it credit for, and that's the Toronto Raptors. So this goes back to the Ringers Top 100, and they did a ranking of the top 100 players, and then they did a depth chart, and basically the Raptors had 3 players in their top 100 players. I made a poll on X about how many players do you guys think the Raptors have in the top 100 players in the league? And I have to tell you, I gave options 2, 3, 4, and 5, and a lot of people picked 2. Some people even went as far, swipe a shout out, to say 1. I very much disagree with this. I really believe that the Raptors have 4 to 5 players in the top 100. And if you think about the math on that, the average team has 3.3. So really, it just comes down to the depth. And I think the Raptors' depth is young. The Raptors' depth was injured. The Raptors' depth was held out. Guys like Kelly Olynyk, guys like Bruce Brown, guys like Jamal Shed, Jacoby Walter, etc. You can really point to the fact that either the Raptors roster was either injured or below 25. And I just think that this team isn't being given its proper due. I think in a different light, they may be viewed differently. There's this sort of winning bias when it comes to ranking players. We rank players who win more favorably than players who don't win because we assume that somehow the players on the court have something to do with the fact that the team is either winning or not winning. And I think that that's fair, but context matters. Lauri Markkanen did not forget how to play basketball this year. He was thrust into a role where his shot diet was completely changed. Scottie Barnes did not regress this year. Brandon Ingram is not a player who is projected to play 20 to 30 games for the rest of his career going forward. RJ Barrett is not necessarily going to play the role that he played this year for the Raptors going forward, and Emmanuel Quickley isn't going to play this role going forward. There's a lot of players that frankly struggled by design. And I think that's sort of the byproduct of tanking. And if you thought this year was bad in terms of tanking, wait till you see next year. Because I would argue that the 2026 draft is just as loaded, if not more loaded, than the 2025 draft. And while you may think as a Raptor fan, well, Rob, doesn't that mean we should tank again? We should probably tank again. We could get another player that's really great for this team. I don't think that's what this team intends to do. And I think that the Brandon Ingram trade kind of signals that. So, in short, whether you think the Raptors are ready to compete next year or not, I think the Raptors think they're ready to compete. Now, again, I listened to a lot of post games and a lot of exit interviews. And one of the most interesting exit interviews that I was looking forward to was Arturas, the general manager, head honcho for the Chicago Bulls. And he mentioned that they weren't necessarily looking to tank each year. They end up in the play-in, and fans are really frustrated, but they were looking to expedite the process of growth by getting all these young players in the door who had experience, players like Josh Giddey. And you think about that and you're like, isn't that pretty similar to what the Raptors did with RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram, players who are still young enough to have a little bit of upside, but still old enough that you don't necessarily need to teach them how to play NBA basketball. So I think I want to break down very quickly why I think the Raptors are ready to compete. So the first thing is shot profiles. Now, this is LeBron James. You'll know him. You've been probably watching him. If you're a basketball fan, you've been watching him for a really long time, since 2003, 2004. He's been one of the best players in the league. He, to some people, is the greatest player of all time. Okay. Now, this is not very relevant or new information. What is perhaps new to you is how LeBron James scores. Now, the thing about stars that I think is very important, and this is, maybe a broader message to all of the people who decide that everything is about points per game and rebounds per game. And if this guy scores 20 and this guy scores 18, this guy's better than this guy. It doesn't matter. Look, 2 points are not 2 points. I've said this a million times. When you score, how you score matters way more than how much you score. Obviously, efficiency and volume is going to matter at some point. If you're consistently scoring 24 and the other guy's consistently scoring 15, maybe you're just better. But in a lot of cases, maybe you're just taking easier shots. And some of the hardest shots in the NBA are isolation possessions, pick and roll ball handling possessions, post up possessions. These are some of those hard possessions. Off screen, off handoffs, cuts, roll man possessions. These are the easier possessions. So when you look at a star player like a LeBron James, you're going to see a great uptick in those possessions. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean LeBron can't cut and LeBron can't take something off a handoff, or he can't spot up for a three, or he can't get some buckets in transition. But I got to tell you, for a little while there, especially in Scottie's second year, I was getting a little bit worried because it didn't feel like Scottie was taking a star diet of shots. It felt like a lot of Scottie's buckets were being created for him. The ones that weren't created for him, really, he struggled. He did really well in like that roll man, role. And, he was more of a secondary creator. And I'm like, shit, this is not the player that I thought was coming out of Florida State. I mean, naturally, this is the player that came out of Florida State, but I thought after 2, 3 years, his handle would get tighter, his shot would get better, and he would be taking a consistently harder diet of shots, closer perhaps to the diet of shots that Jimmy Butler, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander take. And I think that this is important to realize that Scottie, despite, some people saying like, oh my God, his numbers flatlined, he regressed. Take a look at how Scottie Barnes scores. Before we take a look at Scottie Barnes, let's take a look at RJ Barrett. This is how RJ Barrett scores. Okay. A lot of spot ups. You'll notice that his shot diet looks really, really different than LeBron James. There's a narrow skew towards spot ups, handoffs, very few isolations, and more or less like 21.3 possessions, 21.3% in terms of pick and roll ball handling. This is not a star profile. Okay. This is maybe a secondary complementary player type of profile. If you look at Evan Mobley, I can show you Evan Mobley really quickly. Hang on, just bear with me. I think you'll understand the point that I'm trying to make here. Give me one sec here. So this is Evan Mobley. See what I mean? A lot of roll man possessions, cut possessions, right? Spot up possessions. If you look at how Scottie Barnes became an all-star, there was a lot of spot up shots, a lot of shots that were generated for him, a lot of shots within the offense. We call it within the offense, right? So again, when you give a player like free reign and you say, go just find a way to score 25 to 30 points, right? In any given game. So they can get it in transition easier, right? Transition baskets are easier. Just leak out, try to get buckets that way. A lot of kids in high school get buckets that way. Scottie Barnes got a lot of buckets in transition in high school because he was just bigger, faster, stronger than guys. You can get them in like roll man possessions where, the guy sets a screen and then he just rolls hard. He's big. The other guy's slow and boom, dunk to the basket. That's not necessarily what a superstar does in the NBA. It's not what a star does. It's certainly not how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is getting his buckets. Okay, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is getting a lot of buckets as a pick and roll ball handler and a star player. So I want to show you what Scottie Barnes looks like. Okay, and again, frame and reference what not Pascal Siakam. Sorry, I just got distracted by this. Frame and reference what LeBron James looked like and try to look at Scottie Barnes' usage. Do you see what I'm kind of saying? Apart from a low volume and isolation, Scottie Barnes has taken a major step, man. I tell you, the fact that he scored more per possession, got to the line more per possession, took more shots per possession, took almost as many threes per possession as he's ever taken. The fact that the distance of those threes went up considerably, right? Because a lot of above the break threes are a lot harder than, catch and shoot threes from the corner. I've been trying to mention this all year. Scottie's shot diet got way harder this year. And by the way, it was by design. And it was by design because the Raptors envisioned this guy being a superstar. They're not trying to build this whole thing around a role player, despite what the Toronto media are going to try to tell you. It's not that. So, really, the step one to the Raptors, are they ready to compete? Is this guy taking these possessions, amplifying those isolation possessions just a little bit. So, to the point where we're not trying to see Scottie go back to year 2, year 3. We're not trying to see him increase his spot up and roll man possessions. I mean, granted, it's nice when there's an even spectrum, but we're trying to see more progression in those star type touches. Okay. Again, not Arvidas Sabonis, Domantas Sabonis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They can both score 25 points, okay, in any given night. They're scoring 25 points in a completely different way. It is a completely different value proposition when you talk about how a star scores versus how a role player scores. And I, for one, am very encouraged by the fact that Scottie, for the first time in his career, by the way, is taking a star diet of shots. Again, you need those isolation possessions to come up a lot. Granted, right? Like, it doesn't look like Brandon Ingram's. I mean, we want to take a look at like Brandon Ingram's. Hang on one second. Let me just pull that up for a sec. I don't know if Brandon's going to have data from this year or last year, given that he didn't play a lot of games this year. But give me one sec here. Pull this up. Yeah. I mean, again, not a lot of transition for Brandon Ingram, clearly, but a lot of spot up opportunities, a little bit of handoff, a little bit of off cuts, but a ton of possessions as a pick and roll ball handler, a ton of possessions in isolation. One of the most consistently doubled players in isolation. I think the Raptors will look to perfect this equation for BI. But ultimately, look, what I'm trying to tell you is stop thinking about points per game, assists, stop thinking about that. Start thinking about advantage generation assists. Start thinking about shot diet and usage types. And I think that you'll get a much broader picture in terms of what Darko, Masai, and Bobby are trying to achieve with Scottie Barnes, as opposed to just being a casual, lame-ass fan being like, 19 points per game is worse than 19.9 points per game, so Scottie regressed. Like, let's not be dumbasses about this, right? Okay. So that's the first step, obviously. The second step is obviously health, man. You need health for Brandon Ingram. The amount, like, as much as I don't necessarily care if Scottie Barnes scores 10 points per game off of cuts and as a roll man, it certainly doesn't hurt that he scores those possessions. He's a really good paint finisher. He's a lot better than some of his contemporaries and players that a lot of you think he's worse than. And so it doesn't hurt to get a couple easy baskets. The cool thing about really good star players is they get a lot of easy baskets. You saw a lot of transition opportunities for LeBron James. Why make it harder when you don't have to? LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards, they get a ton of easy baskets. Spot ups and transition are easy baskets. Brandon Ingram makes Scottie Barnes getting easy baskets easier. But when Brandon Ingram is on the bench, what we did this year makes Scottie getting hard baskets a lot easier too. Hard baskets are obviously more valuable than easy baskets because fewer players can do it. So Brandon Ingram's health is probably cog number 2. Cog number 3 is just the basis of zero sum. You have to beat somebody. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose every single game. And so it will matter how good the East looks next year. Cleveland, Boston, Milwaukee certainly could be good. Could be good. New York could be good. Indiana could be good. Depends on what happens with Miles Turner. Orlando could be good as well. There's a lot of teams that could be good. There's also a lot of teams that can come out of the gate, struggle a little bit, and and tear it down. We saw what tanking was this year. Maybe tanking is even worse next year. So I think the number three factor in whether or not the Raptors are ready to compete is who are they competing against and are they better than them? I think from a talent perspective, you can make a really solid case that Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett can be better next year. With Brandon Ingram, I think Scottie Barnes can be better. I think he can be more efficient. I think he can get easier baskets. And so, yeah, maybe his shot diet doesn't change drastically, but I think the complexity and difficulty of some of those shots can change significantly. I think the Raptors got a really good preview into what they have with their young players and what those young players can do and can't do. Another year for those young players will be instrumental. We've all seen a lot of year two jumps. We've also seen sophomore slumps. We've seen sophomore slumps with guys like Brandon Pajemski, Jaime Jaquez. Maybe you get a sophomore slump from Jamal Shed and Jonathan Mobo. That would suck because it's not like they were world beaters this year. But maybe you get a jump. Maybe you get an unexpected jump from somewhere where you're not expecting. Maybe that jump comes from a Grady Dick. Maybe that jump comes from a Jamal Shed. Maybe that jump comes from my favorite, to make that jump, Jacoby Walter. We don't know. We don't know yet. So it'll depend, summer league, etc. So I think the third thing is how much of a jump can your young players make? How NBA ready can they make themselves? Again, Ochai Abaji showed a tremendous progression heading into a career year. Is he about to have a heading into a contract year? Is he about to have like a season from heaven? Is he about to shoot like 43% from three? What about Jamison Battle? The Raptors can bat on, I think most of these guys are hard workers. I think that's why they're here. But I think they can bat on most of them being at least as good as they were this year, which is pretty decent. But if a couple of them take a jump that you're not expecting, you could have a surprising amount of depth next year. And that could be a really good thing. Okay, what about Jakob Poeltl? Is there any player on this team that you expect to take a significant step back? The Boston Celtics have Al Horford, Drew Holiday. These are some guys that are well past the mark of when players are supposed to be getting better, so they're supposed to be getting worse, maybe, right? There's a lot of teams out there that have players who are approaching 30, 31, and a lot of those good teams, with the exception clearly of, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the OKC Thunder and maybe Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs, a lot of these teams have like older players that are very, very significant contributors. Look at Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, and guys like that in Houston. Like, what if those guys don't come back? What if they take a significant step back? There's a lot of questions to be answered. But I think for the Raptors, the one little saving grace here is you don't have a single player who's expected to regress next year. You don't have a single player who's like that threshold of like, oh, that's a 32-year-old guard. Is he about to take a fall off? I don't think you have a single player like that. So I think that will be a major thing is, can your veterans continue to get better as well? Can your guys like Brandon Ingram take a step up, right? Now, I said Brandon Ingram's health was a huge contributing factor into whether or not the Raptors are ready to compete. I think another part of Brandon Ingram that we can call a secondary Brandon Ingram, variable is whether or not Brandon Ingram is willing to buy in. Now, BI is notorious for holding the ball. BI is also notorious for not attacking the rim enough. BI is also notorious for maybe dragging out possessions, maybe having a really difficult shot diet. Now, Darko Rajakovic mentioned it in his exit interview that, hey, man, if you can make the shot, make the shot. It's cool, but you can't hold the ball. So Brandon Ingram taking this sort of sabbatical year where he's sort of sitting out and watching this team play, learning the plays, learning the team, learning the culture. Maybe it is a big blessing in disguise because he comes in to the summer working with this team already understanding this is what we do. This is what we don't do. We dial up defensively. I don't think through all my years of watching Brandon Ingram that I've ever actually seen him like be a great defender. And yet I've always believed somehow that if someone could lessen his load offensively, he could be a great defender. I've never really seen Brandon Ingram completely maximized off the ball. Part of it is he doesn't do enough off the ball. Maybe part of it is these are just the systems that he's played in. Maybe this is how coaches have used him. I don't think Darko plans to use him the way that every other coach has used him. I think Darko plans to unleash him in a more efficient manner. Could Brandon Ingram touch 60+% true shooting? I really think that'll be a huge make or break for the Raptors because honestly, if he can, his complexity of shooting and his shooting profile, his usage profile, his great passing, his size, make him honestly one of the 25 to 30 best players in the league if you can unlock him properly. Forget, how many top 100 players the Raptors have. The Raptors could legitimately have two guys who are top 30 players next year, two guys who are all-star level next year, and I think that would be a huge, huge game changer. Of course, now we got to talk about the draft. When you're drafting this high, you don't have to get a guy who contributes right away. I'm not saying that. I understand the Tijon Salons and the Josh Primos of the world. I get it. Sometimes you're going to gamble on upside, and sometimes you're going to take a Kobe Bryant. And look, there's a lot of 18-year-olds coming into this draft. All right. So I get it. I get it. You got to pick the best player available. And if you truly believe that Jeremiah Fears isn't ready to play, but you believe with some development that he'll be the best player in this draft or one of the top 3 players in this draft within a few years, you got to take him. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. Personally, though, I really want the Raptors to get someone who can contribute. I'm not saying go for, an older prospect or whatever. I'm not necessarily saying go for Derek Queen or Colin Murray Boyles. I'm not saying that you can't pick a freshman. I just hope that at some point that freshman or sophomore that you pick or even junior that you pick can contribute to meaningful minutes and winning basketball. There's a lot of defensively oriented players in this draft. Obviously, Kaman Malawach, Cooper Flag. Those are two. Those are two at the top of the board. But there's also a Carter Bryant. There's also a Noah Senge. There's also guys like Asa Newell who have tremendous defensive chops. Colin Murray Boyles. There's a lot. There's a lot of guys with some defensive chops. And personally, the Raptors were a top 3 defense for the last 44 games of this season. That included a really tough part of the schedule and a really easy part of the schedule. But I want to tell you, their defense did not wane because their schedule was hard. It's not like, oh, they had a really hard schedule and their defense was kind of soft, and then they had an easy schedule and their defense was really good. I think a lot of people are dismissing their defensive, upside because, oh, the schedule was soft. No, break it down by 10 game segments and you'll realize that the complexity or difficulty of the matchup had very little to do or very little correlatory, factor or very little correlation between their defensive efficacy and their opponent. Like there was very little. They were good against everybody. Like it was consistent. In fact, I would argue they were even better against the good teams. So bringing in a player who can actually take a step to make that even better, especially if that player has some rim protection. Cooper Flag, rim protection. Carter Bryant, rim protection. Rasheer Fleming, rim protection, right? You got a lot of rim protection here. Thomas Sorber, rim protection. Kaman Malawach, rim protection. Ace Bailey, potentially. I don't know. You pick top 3, top 4. A lot of rim protection potential there, right? Overall, personally, I would like the Raptors to be bigger than they've been. Okay, for whatever reason, this team has gone small a lot. They played a lot of lineups with 2 point guards this year. Davion Mitchell, Emmanuel Quickley, Jamal Shead, etc. It's fine to have small guards if they're good, but personally, the league is getting bigger. Masai Ujiri talked about like being ahead of trends. I want to tell you one trend: the league is getting bigger, bro. Like you want to look at the teams that are better, they're bigger. You want to look at Houston. Why do they have a puncher's chance in hell against the Golden State Warriors? They're big. They're huge. They're a huge team. They're big on the wings. They've got 6'8" wings with huge wingspans. They got Tari Eason, Amen Thompson. You need athleticism, speed, and size. You need it in this point. Obviously, not at the compromise of skill. You can't just have a whole bunch of talentless 6'9" guys out there. This is not the point. But you do have to have like positional versatility and size. And I do think that there's plenty of players in this draft that will give you that positional versatility and size to pair with guys who already give you a lot of positional versatility and size. I mean, if you think about it, Brandon Ingram is so much bigger. Like if you see him stand next to Grady Dick, he's just so much bigger. I know Grady's like 6'7" and he's got a decent wingspan, but BI is like, he's got like a 7'3" wingspan, bro. BI is huge. So the very fact that you are introducing BI into a lineup for Grady Dick makes you bigger. Okay. Now add in a Kaman Malawach off the bench, you become one of the bigger teams in the league, and you definitely become one of the bigger teams in the East. So I just think that that will be a huge competitive advantage for the Raptors. Finally, I think health will play a huge part into this, clearly, and coaching will play a huge part into this. Do the Raptors continue to do what they've done? From the messaging from Darko Rakovic, it doesn't sound like they want to keep doing what they've done. It sounds like what they really want to do is get to start winning. Like, it sounds like they wanna compete. It sounds like they wanna kickstart this process of starting to build a contender around Scottie Barnes. It sounds like they wanna make the playoffs. It does not sound like they are willing to burn entire games to get Ochai Agbaji some pick and roll ball handling possessions, right? So, I think that the internal competition, the camaraderie, the togetherness, the good habits of this team will eventually lead to this team winning a lot more next season, right? And I see a lot of people are very excited about what is happening with the game right now, and it seems like the Miami Heat are about to pull it out in overtime. So awesome for them. But overall, great, great, great. Davion, wow, just insane, man. Awesome, man. Good for him, man. Honestly, I gotta take the L on the Davion Mitchell stuff. I said earlier in the season that if he didn't develop a 3-point shot, that he would totally be out of the league this summer, and a lot of people hated it. And I got to tell you, since that day, I remember like having this like spat with him online. And I remember since that day to this day, I remember that day itself when like he blocked and I think he shut down his Twitter. I don't think he blocked me. I think he shut down his Twitter. And I remember saying then and there, and I've communicated this message to him since. And I said, I think this is the day that Davion Mitchell like changes his career. Like I feel like it's about to change for him. And it totally changed for him. Like from that day on, he was like 40% 3-point shooting. I'm like, oh my God, eating crow here. Despite what people may think about my initial bearishness on Davion, it was based on his play for the last 3 years. Davion has been awesome, awesome for the Raptors since that little bullshit. He was good for the Raptors, and now he's been really good for the Heat. So very, very happy for him, man. Oh, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Troy Knight's like, it's exactly it. I was not saying like I know for sure he's not going to be in the league. I said if he doesn't develop his three, he won't be in the league. And I do want to mention, this is a bit of a credit to Darko moment because I do like to give Darko his flowers. OG Anunoby has been so much better for the Knicks than he was for the Raptors, in my opinion. Okay, Pascal Siakam. I think he has just settled beautifully into his role with the Indiana Pacers. I think Dennis Schroeder has really found his niche, especially with Brooklyn earlier this year and last year. And I think Davion is doing really well. And I think all of these, all of these little developmental stories are great indications that Darko is a really freaking good coach because he worked with all of these guys a lot. Okay. So yeah, overall, very, very excited about the future. I do need to jump onto playback, but I do want to say something real quick. Hang on one second. Pull this up. Okay. This is going to be real quick. I got like 1 minute to go. I'm going to be late, but we're going to be discussing a lot of players, dude. A lot of players. I want to point out to something. Okay. Now, look, I don't mean to be salty, but a lot of people have said a lot of bullshit about me over the last, I want to say like 2-3 days since that Mike Gates situation. And one of them is this douche, Locked On Raptors. Okay. Saying, I can promise you this is not a story that is going to linger past today within the room. I'm sorry this is how you feel. But again, this is a thing blown out of proportion by a person who, on top of acting in bad faith, has a long history of saying extremely gross things about Raptors players, and it gains steam because the internet spreads inaccuracies faster than the actual truth. Now, I tried to respond to this, but I am hidden from the channel. I do want to say one thing to Mr. Locked On Raptors and Mr. Sean Woodley. You may not have the courtesy to address me by name because you prefer to hide behind the cloak of, plausible deniability. And, so that if ever I was to come to you and say, why are you talking shit about me? You just be able to say, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about somebody else. I'm going to be like really straight up with you. Like, don't talk shit about me if you don't know me. You are going based on the tom-toms, my friend. My record on the Raptors has been better than yours every step of the way. You go back to every single trade, go back to listen to what I said, what you said. I have been way more accurate and way more ahead. So the truth is, I'm not trying to sweat this shit. There's a lot of people who've come out and kind of like made side swipes. They've said like, oh, come on, there's people like, look, I'm not even trying to put these people on blast, but let me just be clear about something. When you say some bullshit like everybody does it, when you say some bullshit like I couldn't hear anything, I couldn't hear anything. People are witch hunting for the media, whatever. Yo, like, you're really missing the point. This shit has been transcribed. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I think every single player is aware of it. It wasn't cool. Just come out and, out the guy who clearly said it, who we all know who did it. And I think that that would be so much better. The media going to such extreme lengths to try and minimize this, to try to gaslight everybody into thinking like it's no big deal. It happens all the time. No one could really hear it. And all of that I kind of understand as a natural response to deflect responsibility. But bro, can we be real about something? Can we be really real about something? When you try to insinuate that I doctored that clip in any way, when you try to insinuate that I put it out of context, you're a fucking asshole. There's no context. You can't put something out of context that was never put into context. You understand what I'm saying? There was no context. I said, get the fucking media some training on media, can we get the media some media training because they left them hot mics on? I didn't put anything in context. There was nothing in context, bro. I didn't edit anything. I didn't fucking, and you'd be very, very fucking lucky. You numbnuts are very fucking lucky that some very, very powerful people reached out to me that day before I released that transcript. Because, bro, I was about to put your fucking pictures next to it. So, like, I don't really care if you're trying to drag me for shit that I have done. Don't try to drag me for some shit that I never did, bro. Don't try to do that because you know, people have an aversion to people who are unpredictable. I've noticed that it's a human tendency. You don't like people who are unpredictable. And I am very unpredictable. I'm not someone who's going to sit here and, sit in a box. You're not going to be like, oh, Rob would never. No, Rob will. Rob will. So don't push me. Don't test me. Don't play with me and fuck the hell off. Okay. All right. I'm out of here. I'm going to talk to y'all later. Enjoy. And to those of you who want to watch the game with us on playback, definitely chime in. I'm heading over there right now. Peace, enjoy, and let's go Raptors. This is going to be a really fun summer. Can't wait. And again, to reiterate to anybody who's catching this late, we are going to be doing at least two. I'm going to keep reaching out to more people, more darts on the board. I'm going to keep reaching out to people about, coming on. And these are just people that I read on the draft, and I'm just reaching out to them. And I am really, really, really blessed and thankful that this platform has grown enough that in spite of all the bullshit that people want to say about what this is and what this isn't or whatever, that these people have looked at this platform and said, this is something that I want to invest my time into. And I hope that in the coming years that we can grow and grow and grow so we can attract even better people. That would be amazing. And I'm really thankful to you guys because honestly, these people are only willing to come on and talk to me because you guys are an audience. So I appreciate y'all. And Zigsaw Puzzle saying Davion just saved Miami season. Dope. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Enjoy yourselves.